Hello everyone, this is Yoko. In this channel, I share information in English about events in China that often go unnoticed by other countries' media, based on the information I've gathered from various sources. I'd be delighted to receive your comments on the video content as I collect information from multiple media outlets. If you find the content interesting, please consider subscribing to the channel and showing your support. Now, let's discuss the largest embezzlement case that occurred in the Chinese market. This issue has been covered in many Japanese articles for quite some time, involving a high-ranking official from a Chinese bank embezzling a substantial amount of foreign and Chinese currency and subsequently fleeing to the United States. Recently, a new verdict has been delivered, attracting attention. Firstly, let me introduce what this case was about. This incident dates back approximately 30 years, occurring between 1993 and 2001. Over this extended period, several bank executives in China engaged in heinous activities such as embezzling the bank's funds. This incident took place in Guangdong province, in the southern part of China, an area not widely familiar in Japan. While the region had experienced economic growth, it has recently faced challenging economic conditions. In the early years of prosperity, banks in such regions handled significant amounts of funds as the economy thrived, highlighting the crucial role of banks as the economy expands. In these areas, where financial transactions are substantial in daily life, high-ranking officials managed to embezzle substantial amounts for about 7 years without being detected. The embezzled funds included public money, with misappropriation amounting to 9 billion yen and embezzlement reaching 14 billion yen. This is a massive event, marking the largest embezzlement case in the Chinese market. Even from a current perspective, this is a considerable sum, but during the actual embezzlement period, it was even more colossal. For comparison, there have been cases in Japan where 300 million yen was embezzled, considered one of the largest unsolved cases in the country. However, the value of money between the 300 million yen at that time and the present 300 million yen differs significantly. In today's value, the amount would be equivalent to approximately 30 billion yen. Although the exact calculation might have variations, this case involves a comparison with the value of the Chinese currency at the time of embezzlement and its subsequent changes. Looking at the article, it mentions a comparison with 1990. The average monthly salary in 1990 was 168 yuan. Considering the current official exchange rate of approximately 5,000 yen for 1 yuan, in 1990, 10,000 yuan would be equivalent to around 300,000 yen. Even with some discounting, there was about a 20-fold difference between then and now. Therefore, considering the value of the Chinese currency from 1993, when the embezzlement case occurred, and comparing it to the current value, it is remarkable that the culprits embezzled a total of 2.3 billion yuan. Even by today's standards, conservatively estimating, it would be equivalent to around 46 billion yuan. Converting this to Japanese yen, it would not reach 1 trillion yen but would still be an astonishing amount in the 900 billion yen range. Now, after fleeing to the United States, this individual, known as the interposer, was actually violating U.S. laws. Legal proceedings were underway in the United States for these violations. As mentioned earlier on this channel, while it is possible to transfer large sums of money from China overseas, it often involves some form of illegal activity. Recently, there has been a trend where Chinese individuals explosively shop at tax-free points in Japan. However, it turns out that rather than using the tax-free quota, they are engaging in resale within Japan. The resale is conducted through companies owned by Chinese individuals in Japan. From the perspective of Japanese law, this practice amounts to tax evasion. Even though these individuals are ordinary students, they manage to spend over 200 million yen, and this is actually part of a scheme to convert Chinese currency into Japanese yen. As a side note, some people have questioned whether credit card limits are so high. Of course, it's not about spending 200 million yen in one go. They likely used multiple cards over several years. Moreover, the question arises about how a student brought in over 200 million yen in cash to Japan. This involves creating cards in China, making purchases in Japan, selling the goods to Japanese merchants, and ultimately converting Chinese currency into Japanese yen. However, such a scheme raises questions about tax evasion under Japanese law. In any case, this former bank executive, even after fleeing to the United States, found himself in legal trouble there. He was sentenced to 22 years in prison by a Las Vegas court in May 2009 for crimes such as money laundering. However, before the completion of the 22-year sentence, he was forcibly back to China in 2021. It seems that he was trying to avoid being implicated in China. Interestingly, the individual's wife, who had initially gone to the U.S. with him, divorced him, remarried an American, and then remarried the former bank executive who had recently received a guilty verdict in China. Through this, she seemed to be attempting to obtain permanent residency in the U.S. So, the American woman who initially married this individual was likely hired or collaborated for the purpose of obtaining U.S. permanent residency. When Chinese individuals try to obtain permanent residency in the U.S., such schemes are commonly utilized. However, it's important to note that permanent residency and citizenship are different. Even with permanent residency, if you violate U.S. laws, you can still be deported. In the end, despite having means to take out a huge amount of money, it involves engaging in illegal activities at some point. The former bank executive also violated U.S. laws, receiving a 22-year sentence for money laundering and other charges from a Las Vegas court in 2009. After about 22 years had passed, before completing his sentence, he was forcibly returned to China in 2021. Recently, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Now, I'd like to compare this individual's case with that of Rasu Amin, which I introduced on this channel in the past. Rasu Amin gained attention for having 100 mistresses and was the head of a notorious Chinese asset management company. When converted to Japanese yen, his assets amounted to 17 billion yen, and there were various reports with different exchange rates, ranging from 273 yen to around 290 yen per yuan. However, it's important to clarify that, despite the conversion to Japanese yen, these funds were originally in Chinese currency. This person who embezzled 17 billion yuan is now facing a death sentence, which was handed down in 2020 or 2021. I've mentioned this on my channel several times. Additionally, there is a theory that the numbers have been inflated for propaganda purposes to portray this individual, who had such a large amount of money and had 100 mistresses, as a heinous figure that the Chinese regime cracked down on. Therefore, the American woman who initially married this individual was likely hired or collaborated to obtain permanent residency in the United States. When Chinese individuals attempt to gain permanent residency in the U.S., such schemes are commonly used. However, it's important to note that permanent residency and citizenship are different. Even with permanent residency, if you violate U.S. laws, you can still face deportation. In the end, despite having means to withdraw a substantial amount of money, individuals often find themselves involved in illegal activities at some point. This former bank executive also violated U.S. laws and received a 22-year prison sentence for crimes such as money laundering from a Las Vegas court in 2009. Before about 22 years had passed, he was forcibly returned to China in 2021. Recently, he received a life sentence. Now, let's compare this individual's case with that of Rasu Amin. Rasu Amin had 100 mistresses and was the head of a notorious Chinese asset management company. When converted to Japanese yen, his assets amounted to 17 billion yen, with various reports citing exchange rates ranging from 273 yen to around 290 yen per yuan. However, despite the conversion to Japanese yen, these funds were originally in Chinese currency. This individual, who embezzled 17 billion yuan, is currently facing a death sentence handed down in 2020 or 2021. There is a theory that the numbers might have been inflated for propaganda purposes to portray this individual, who had a significant amount of money and 100 mistresses, as a heinous figure that the Chinese regime cracked down on. However, officially announced, the embezzlement amount is 1.7 billion yuan, right? In this case, the embezzlement amount at that time was 2.3 billion yuan, and this alone led to a death sentence. This embezzlement amount is larger than the embezzlement amount of Rasu Amin, who received a death sentence for 1.7 billion yuan. As mentioned earlier, this is the amount at that time, and if we adjust for the current monetary sense, it would be around 20 times larger. In today's terms, this would be embezzling at least around 40 billion yuan. In comparison to Rasu Amin, who received the death penalty for 1.7 billion yuan. The judgment seems too lenient. As I mentioned earlier, if you look at Rasu Aman's sentence, it may give the impression that this individual, upon being implicated in China, might have thought he could face the death penalty as well. Certainly, the difference between life imprisonment and the death penalty is significant in China. In the case of life imprisonment, there is a possibility of parole, and individuals may resurface in society in some form. In this case, the individual's assets have been confiscated, making financial manipulations challenging, but there is still a possibility that money is hidden somewhere. When the judgment was delivered, there were reports that a smile appeared on the face of this individual. However, if this person were to receive the death penalty, there might be criticisms within the United States for the forced repatriation within their jurisdiction. In that case, there could be discussions about individuals likely to face the death penalty being handed over to China, leading to a situation where China, as a result, might let individuals who embezzled public funds and fled to a foreign country go free. Therefore, there is a possibility that the death penalty was avoided, considering the potential backlash, and also taking into account that the individual has already received a guilty verdict in the United States. This decision carries various messages. If all the crimes were committed within China, the death penalty would be natural. However, if a foreign government hands over the perpetrator to China, it avoids delivering the death penalty to avoid criticism from the local government for forcibly repatriating someone who might face the death penalty. From the perspective of the perpetrator, being within China might lead to the death penalty, as seen in the case of Rasu Aman. However, once they escape to a foreign country, especially one where there is opposition to the death penalty, the chances of facing execution decrease. Furthermore, the fact that the embezzlement amount of 2.3 billion yuan did not lead to a death sentence may also send a message that if the embezzlement amount is below this level, it might be acceptable. In conclusion, while the Communist Party of China is sending a message that they will pursue criminals even if they flee abroad, the actual impact may not align with the party's intentions. Those who embezzle public funds, exploit their positions for personal gain, and then attempt to escape to a foreign country may continue to evade justice in the future. That concludes our discussion for this time. Until next time.